be honest. So I've been asked today to speak, actually, just to clarify about not necessarily just our relationship with the EU going forward, but our relationship with the rest of the world. We've got global Britain now, we're out to sign trade deals with everyone, and what's the impact of doing so on the environment? In terms of context, I suppose, you've seen lots of things in the news recently. Liam Fox is recommissioning the Royal Yacht. We're going to send Boris Johnson around the world to sell innovative jams to the Chinese. And we're going to strike free trade deals with everyone because unshackled from the EU will be a global superpower who will reinvigorate our relationships with the Commonwealth and all of the... It goes on. It's a front page of the Telegraph about every other day, something like this. I mean, this is, in reality, it's a bit more complicated than this. We're not really able to negotiate new trade deals until we've left the EU, so at least for another 2 years. And the ultimate priority up until then is our relationship with the European Union. And this is really important because the European Union is essentially our baseline going forward. What is our relationship there? And from an environmental perspective, from a trading perspective, the deepest possible relationship with the European Union is the most beneficial to the UK. And this is a relationship that can go beyond tit for tat on tariffs, but actually have deep regulatory cooperation, a living agreement where we continue to cooperate on addressing the environmental problems that we face. And the reason for doing this together is quite simple. We're right next to each other. If we pump out fumes into the sky here from dirty factories, it blows over onto the continent and goes into children's lungs, makes trees wither. And despite the fact we're leaving the European Union, this doesn't change. We're still next to each other. It's still within our interests to cooperate. But some of you might be wondering why trade is an environmental issue as such. So you can see it there in terms of our future relationship with the European Union, but that's potentially a bit bigger than trade. But the reason is that in the modern trading system, it's no longer about removing tariffs, which is what it used to be. So for those that don't know, tariffs are punitive, using long words, are taxes on exports and imports designed to protect local industry. So it used to be that the trade negotiation would be between two countries trying to say, you lower your tax on the imports of cars and we'll lower our taxes on the imports of goods. And it would just be doing like that. But now tariffs are quite low globally. There's some peaks in different areas. Agriculture is still quite protected. Now it's about looking at regulation and saying, how does the way we regulate prevent us from trading with each other? And just to give an example of this, the reason US farmers don't sell, you very rarely will see US steak in the supermarkets. And the reason for that isn't because we put a big tax on it, which we do, but it's actually because we ban the use in the EU of hormones when you're producing cattle, when you're growing them. And because of that ban, and because the use of hormones is so prevalent in the US, it makes it very few of their suppliers actually export over here. Another example between the EU and US is that within the EU we ban about 1,300 chemicals from use in cosmetics. The reason for that being that we actually ban animal testing, so lots of these chemicals in the EU framework have not been proved safe. So that's 1,300 plus actually. In the US they ban 11. So they're very different regulatory frameworks. So when it comes to agreements going forward, so if we are as a UK to negotiate a deal with the US, we're going to have to think about making some compromises in these areas because as far as the US exporters are thinking, their biggest barrier for the agriculture sector is the fact that we don't allow hormones in beef, the fact that we don't allow GMOs in production of grains. So there's an environmental issue here in terms of us saying what standards do we actually want to adhere to in the UK going forward, and what are the implications of some of these trade deals in terms of the decisions we make. And there are long-standing implications as well in terms of when we look at this globally, when we look at regulation globally, there are essentially two regulatory superpowers. So the biggest markets in the world set the rules. You've got the US and you've got the EU. You've got a third up and coming in China. The EU and US recently tried to agree a relationship together, a negotiation to try and reconcile some of these differences so that they could see off the threat of China. It fell apart. Our regulatory approaches are too different. So when it comes to the UK going forward as part of global Britain, we're never going to be completely sovereign when it comes to regulation. We're always going to be following someone. But there's a decision as to who we follow, what standards we follow. Do we adopt the same approach as the US? Do we continue to follow our closest neighbours with the rules we actually helped develop at the time in the European Union? And that's where I'm very interested, because from my point of view, I'd much rather we stay broadly in line with the European Union's approach, because it's got a precautionary approach which I quite value, which means that if there's the risk of harm, the government can make a choice to ban the product until it's proved safe. In the US, it's the other way around. The government, for it to ban something, has to prove it as being unsafe. And that leads to some very different outcomes. There's a couple of other things I'm going to flag in terms of why trade and environmental issues and how they impact the broader Brexit debate. So these aren't necessarily they're going to affect our environment either way, but it's the way it seeps in. One of them is devolution. So this whole vision of global Britain that we're going to go out to sea actually clashes with devolution and having devolved powers in terms of in Scotland. So I'm from Wales as well, I should mention, Wales and Northern Ireland. And the reason for that is in terms of the regulatory framework of the UK, it has been dictated, or dictated is the wrong word, it has been shaped by the European Union. So it allows there to be the common standards of the UK have been created by the European Union, and it allows for divergence between the different countries, so say Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales and England, on certain issues, but it allows for divergence within constraints, to the point, not to the point of market failure, where we wouldn't be able to sell products across the border into Scotland. But now we're leaving the European Union, that regulatory framework has to be repatriated to the UK. And one of the reasons that it will need to exist is for, as I've explained, for us to negotiate trade deals with other countries around the world. We have to be able to talk about our regulations as the UK as a whole. But the problem, as soon as you say that there's a UK framework within the UK, and you will have seen with Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP in the past couple of weeks, is that it's very controversial. People do not like, and I'm being from Wales, I can attest to this, people do not like being dictated to from Westminster. And this is going to cause some big political problems. One of the other issues that's going to come up is around farming. There's a real... Farmers are sort of, when it comes to Brexit, from my perspective, the definition of turkeys voting for Christmas. There seems to be large support for the Brexit vote, but actually when you look at what the potential consequences could be, they're likely to be severe. And one of the reasons for this is when we go forward, the UK will have broken off from our biggest trading partner, and we'll still trade with them, but there'll be new barriers, and we've got to look to make up that difference somewhere. We've got to look to make it up with trade with new countries. What's the UK good at? We're not good at farming. Maybe a couple of niche products, but generally speaking, we're not particularly good at farming. We're very good at financial services, insurance, legal services. So what are we going to do? We're going to go to these countries around the world and we're going to say, we want you to give our service providers better access into your markets. And they're going to go, what are you going to give up? Logically, I mean, this isn't what I know will happen. It seems like a very plausible scenario. We're going to go, oh, we'll give you better access on agriculture. That's something you've wanted for a while. And maybe domestic farmers can compete with that. But when you factor in that they're likely going to receive fewer subsidies, and they're also going to have restricted access to their biggest market in the European Union, and they're now competing with cheaper products from abroad, they're going to suffer. And what you end up with then is quite a complicated political scenario where the Leave voting rural areas have lost out at the expense of the Remain voting, broadly speaking, cultural hubs of our cities of Manchester and London. And this is one of the debates I see that's going to actually kick off in the next couple of years, because in terms of Brexit being equitable and it being evenly spread, in terms of us having a Britain that works for everyone, the logical progression for how the UK survives Brexit doesn't lend itself to an equitable outcome. So, but within all of this, and I think with a lot of debates we can sort of get drawn into talking about all of these things that happen far away and all of these bad things that we can push far away. Ultimately, whether our environment and our environmental standards and our health and safety standards remain good, improve, or get worse is a domestic decision. It's what sort of country does the UK want to be? What are our values? And who are we as a people? And I don't know the answer to that just yet, but I think we're about to find out. So, yeah, thank you.